Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for my review of the 1982 horror film Alone in the Dark, starring Jack Palance, Martin Landau, Donald Pleasence, Dwight Schultz, and many other actors who all do a very good job. I would say the acting in this film is pretty high quality, as you would expect from a cast like this. So, I think all I really need to say to recommend this film, Alone in the Dark, is that Donald Pleasence plays a psychiatrist and Martin Landau and Jack Palance play escaped mental patients. But if you need more than that, I'll try and help you out there. So, I will say Alone in the Dark is kind of interesting in the fact that I don't think it reinvents everything. The plot's pretty typical. There's a doctor in charge of some patients who escape and wreak havoc, and that's basically where Alone in the Dark takes off from there. And there's some twists and turns in this film which are done pretty well. Now, this film doesn't have a huge body count. I hesitate to call it a slasher because there's not a ton of kills, but there are a few memorable kills in this film. It's one of those where I would say it's probably quality over quantity if you're into that sort of thing. Director Jack Sholder also does a good job with this film. He also directed A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and The Hidden, which I think is a very underrated kind of horror sci-fi action hybrid. And I do like Alone in the Dark quite a bit. It's one of his earlier films, but I think he did a great job. Like I said, the acting is also very strong throughout. Even some of the more unknown actors that I wasn't really familiar with, I thought did a good job. Sometimes in these types of films, you get like a great lead performance from the really known star, and then some of the other acting's kind of lackluster. But I like the acting all the way throughout this film. Also, there is kind of a twist in this film, and I pretty much knew it because I kind of remembered it from like 10 years ago when I saw this movie before. But I would say even though I knew the twist, it didn't ruin the reveal. I think it's a very well done twist. And I would say if you're a first time viewer, you might not totally see it coming unless you're strongly looking for it, because the film does a really good job with the twist. So I like that as well. Of course, there's also a nightclub scene with a band in this film, because this is something I haven't mentioned, but it seems like almost every 80s horror film has a scene with a live band, either at a club or at a party. For some reason, this was just something they did in the 80s. So, do I have anything to say negative about Alone in the Dark? I am going to have one brief nitpick, and I've said this about other 80s horror films. Something I'm noticing with these films, even though I love a lot of them, they're some of my favorites, is that the films start great. The first half hour or so is great. The ending, great. The last half hour of this film's fantastic. It's the middle half hour in these movies, as this is around a 92 or 93 minute film. Kind of just, it's not so much that it even lags. Some of the stuff happening is interesting. It just seems to get a little bit stuck where the plot maybe isn't progressing as much as it could. The build-up is maybe not as strong as it could be. It seems like some of these films have great ideas and then kind of get stuck in the middle a little bit, if that makes sense. But like I said, overall the film is really, really good. The beginning's fantastic. The ending is fantastic, which I think is probably more important overall. I just feel like there are little lags here and there that maybe could have been tightened up a little bit. Also, for me, the tone of this film worked, but the tone is a little bit all over the place. It feels like there's some really dark, well-done scenes, and there are a few lighter scenes where they went for maybe some strange dark humor, which kind of works, kind of doesn't work. But again, it didn't detract from the enjoyment of the film for me, and others might find some of the humor more to their satisfaction than I did. There were parts I thought were funny. There were just a few things I was like, yeah, I don't know about that based on what was happening in the film. I will say, though, that I feel like most of the characters make good decisions in this film overall, which are believable, and that's always good in a horror film because that's not always the case. As for the Blu-ray itself, it's a Scream Factory release, and I find these kind of hit and miss. Some of them are packed with features, some of them aren't. This one has a pretty good amount of features. There's an interview with the director, Jack Sholder. There's also an interview with actress Carol Levy, who has a supporting role in the film. Those are pretty good. There's also some content on the band that played in the film, and that's okay too. There's also a brief feature on the locations that were used in the film, which I could have taken or left. I don't think it's essential. It's also a new 2K scan. The film looks really well. And of course, there's trailers, things like that. But overall, the special features are good and highlight various things about the film, which is always a nice inclusion. So overall, I would recommend Alone in the Dark to fans of 80s horror films and fans of just well-made suspense horror films with some slasher elements to them as well. More reviews coming soon. Thanks for watching.